Hello guys, how's it going? Back with another Dragonflight beta update for you. Today we have a blue post from Blizzard on Mythic Plus. They cover the seasonal dungeon rotation, they cover the seasonal affix, and they cover Mythic Plus item level. I released a video a couple of days ago on the Mythic Plus item level. This was based on data mined information through Wowhead. It turns out that that information was completely incorrect and that video was just wrong. The latest information from Blizzard is much better. So basically, dungeons are now scaling up to plus 20 keystone levels, with end of dungeon rewards being 405 item level, and then Great Vault rewards being 421 item level. You can upgrade the end of dungeon rewards from 405 item level to 415 item level if you have a rating of 2400. That would essentially be plus 20s done entirely across the board. What does this mean then in terms of Mythic Plus gearing? So this has just completely closed the gap between Mythic Plus players and players who raid as well. So I've just made a quick spreadsheet here to show you the difference in item level between Mythic Plus players and players who both raid and Mythic Plus, right? Or potentially even just raid. So this is for Shadowlands Season 4. I have taken these potential item levels for an Outlaw Rogue, and I have done exactly the same for Dragonflight, so we're getting a direct comparison here. If you were an Outlaw Rogue in Shadowlands Season 4, playing Mythic Plus only, right, you could get 3 or 4 item level. If you were a Raider and a Mythic Plus player, you could get 3 10 item level with 1 special item, so you were roughly 6 item levels ahead of your Mythic Plus counterpart. In Dragonflight, if you were dedicated to Mythic Plus only, you'd have 421 item level, and if you were a Raider and a Mythic Plus player, you could get 422.5 item level. That means you're only 1.5 item levels ahead with 1 special item. This has just closed the gap almost completely. There still are going to be these incentives to raid if you want. However, if you want to just be purely dedicated to Mythic Plus and that is your main endgame content that you want to consume, I think that this is going to be a much better expansion for you, and you can essentially just drop into heroics and normals, say for the first few weeks to get your tier pieces, and after that you can be solely dedicated to Mythic Plus. I am so excited for this. I don't really have time in my life anymore to be playing 9 or 12 hours a week of raiding, especially at the Mythic level. So being able to just hop on and play Mythic Plus whenever I like is going to be much easier for me. I feel like as a more casual player now, I am super excited for this. I really can't wait for it. What are the other things that they mentioned then? These are also great directions to be taking the game, especially for Mythic Plus. So I'm super happy for them. The first one, which Eon had mentioned before, so basically biggest change here coming in Dragonflight is that we'll be rotating the entire set of Mythic Plus dungeons every season. That means that we're going to have completely new dungeons each season, and it's going to feel more like raiding, where we have new content, new challenge every single major patch. That is incredibly good for Mythic Plus players again, for 2 reasons. The first one is you're going to have to be learning. There's going to be more room for innovation as a Mythic Plus player, right? You can have a higher skill cap, even I would say. If you dedicate yourself to Mythic Plus for the first like 3 or 4 weeks of a new season, and you are absorbing all of this information, learning new routes, then there's going to be a higher skill cap. There's also going to be more room for new players who are returning to that season, right? What would typically happen is players and veterans would just be gathering knowledge over a season, over an expansion, right? And then in the last season of that expansion, they would just have way more knowledge than a returning player. But also, because there's been so much time, there's not as much difference between veteran players. I think now this is going to be completely different. If you just hardcore dedicate yourself to Mythic Plus at the start, you can gain a lot of knowledge about the new season, about the new dungeons, about the new bosses, about the new trash mobs, etc. And it means that new players returning also just get that opportunity. You don't have to have played for the entire expansion to know these dungeons inside out. So I'm very excited about this. This is a great change. The next change that they have just announced is that the new seasonal affix is being released as an experiment on the beta. I'm going to show you some footage of that now. It is called Thundering. Essentially, it is a downside only seasonal affix, right? They're trying to dumb down the seasonal affixes so that there's more room for learning the Mythic Plus dungeons. It sounds like that's their general philosophy. The affix itself is only a downside. It does not have an upside, so it's not a kiss curse effect, right? Such as, I mean, one of my favorites was Shadowlands Season 3, so the relics, the Woe, and Vi relics. I felt like that was an amazing seasonal affix. It changed the way that you thought about dungeons when you wanted to take Woe over for example, right? All of this stuff I was super excited about at the time, and it was very enjoyable to play through. This seasonal affix feels more like it is just a normal Mythic Plus dungeon affix that's going to be changing from season to season. Thundering is essentially just a downside, so for those who haven't seen it yet, I'm showing it on screen now, but there's a blue swirly that spawns around you, and there's blue swirlies around you, and then you shoot out blue orbs that then can stun others. The reason why I think this is bad is A, it has no upside, right? It'd be cool if you could damage mobs with it or something maybe. B, it's a massive downside for melee players, so if you're a melee player, this affix is awful. It essentially acts as a much worse version of quaking because you have to try and gather even further distance between you and your party members, or else everyone's just going to get stunned. I really dislike that because it means there's going to be much more downtime for melee than ranged players, and also it's going to be really awful to get hit by others, right? So there was the prideful season, right? The prideful orbs going out. Sometimes someone just wouldn't move into a particularly easy location. You then couldn't see it and you just get sniped by a stun orb from behind. If that does happen, then it's going to be tilting, right? It's going to be very frustrating when you're playing in these style of affixes. I would much prefer it if they made it just like a quaking affix potentially that was around you, and then you could damage or like stun mobs with it or something, so it had an upside. I'm not really sure. I don't have that much feedback to give you at the minute because they have said they're going to be iterating on this affix heavily and they want as much feedback as possible, so I'm going to give them some feedback and see where they head with the affix, because it's definitely going to be getting changed. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed that update. I am very excited to hear all this information coming out of Blizzard. They clearly want to make Mythic Plus more of an end game feature of World of Warcraft, and for me, that's perfect. I want to be able to just play Mythic Plus with a little bit of raiding on side or a little bit of PvP. I think this is my favourite content, and I'm very happy that I can just dedicate myself to it now rather than having to try and do, 9 to 12 hours of raiding on top of it. So, super excited for this. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. If you have, we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.